audio. There we go. There we go. There we go. And we are recording. Got Ursula. Ursula Bradley is coming on with us today. Can you see me and hear me, Ursula? Can you hear me? Let's see if we got you. Let's take your mute off. Unmute. Let's see here. What we're gonna do. Can you hear me?
I can hear you well. Can you hear
Very
me?
good. I thought I was having a little technical difficulty, but I had you on mute to start. Good to see you.
Awesome.
Good to see you.
You
Yeah.
sound here.
This has been a little while coming, right?
Yes, but it's here.
I wasn't sure. I was like, this has got to happen. It's taking too long.
I know it. Exciting.
I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. Let me just do a little introduction right quick. My name is Charita Cadenhead, realtor, author, and host of About the Book on Zoom.us, as well as once a month on Joe Lockett radio show 101.1 FM out of Birmingham, Alabama. And today I have with me author Ursula Bradley. And we're going to be talking about this book, and it's called Forgiving Father. Okay. Now I know that some people, they see that title, they might have some misgivings or misunderstandings what it's going to be about. So some of you who may be watching this later on may be surprised. But I'm going to go ahead and do a little intro for Ursula, so you'll know a little bit about her in case you don't know her. Ursula Matsin Bradley grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and is the founder of the Matsin Cancer Foundation. Her expertise is in the areas of life skills, parenting skills, youth and teen mentoring and empowerment, human resources, and marketing development. Ursula is passionate about inspiring and motivating painful souls to enter her path. She also loves mentoring women, youth, caregivers, and cancer patients. Her goal is to create and build a coaching business to motivate and inspire women. Ursula Matsin Bradley is available at workshops, retreats, and speaking engagements based upon her book, Forgiving Fathers. And I'm going to call out this contact information right up front. uabradley@gmail.com or mastincancerfoundation@gmail.com. All right, about this book. I've got my phone sitting here, so let me make sure I got it on silent.
Yes.
I think my grandkids start calling me. Don't want to talk. You know, they'll do that at the most inappropriate times. So look, let me start off by asking you. I want you to tell me a little bit about this book, and I've highlighted a number of things that I want to talk about within the book.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me a little bit about the book and tell me why you wrote this book.
Well, this book was actually published in 2017, and a year or two before that, I knew I wanted to put something out there as it relates to the fathers. Because as we all can see in this world, there's a dark mark and an X placed on the fathers. And what I want people to understand is that we've got to get out of that mindset of thinking that the father needs to be that missing puzzle piece. That puzzle piece that is missing in so many individuals' lives is important. And the reason I really wrote this book was because my father, in my home when I was a child, I had a transition. But as it all ended up, I had to be the caregiver for my father. And I had to take care of my father. My mother stepped back in, and we had to take care of my father until his death. So if I was a person, as a young lady, that really had some unforgiveness in my heart, or frustrated, or anger, or bitterness, I wouldn't have been that caregiver, and I wouldn't have been at peace at this day as it relates to my father. So I knew I wanted to put something out there. So when I spoke to my actual writing coach, she said, Ursula, we need this. And this is a self-help book, and it was written to be small and simple for all ages, because as a self-help book, we need to get to the point and get people to understand and not have something long drawn. It is used for ministries, coaches uses it, social workers, and children can use it as well as adults.
Okay. All right. Very good. So that kind of answers my next question about, who is this book written for? And you named a number of people that might find it very helpful. What I didn't hear is for people whose father may have been absent in their lives and need to find a way to mend that. So, which was what I was thinking would be the primary audience for this book, but evidently there's a wide audience for it.
It is. It is. It's broad.
It's very broad. So it was very interesting because I knew a little bit about your story, and your father not being present and not, you having not seen him for a few years. So I knew about that. So when I started reading the book, it was interesting that you didn't start out with that.
No.
No. That's kind of the build-up. You sort of did it in reverse. Was there any thought behind it, doing it that way?
Well, it really wasn't, because I always tell people, I said the title was the last thing. But what I wanted to do was actually talk to people just about how, as women and men, how you have to work together as it relates to the children. And at the end, I started telling a little bit about my story as it relates to that. And I tell people this is a positive book because my father was my heart, and he still is my heart. And I continue to keep his name alive by sharing and talking to people, because it's so important for people to understand that as adults, we need to understand the most important part here, and that's the child. That's the child.
Right.
So I did do a little flip with it and ended it as it relates to talking about my story.
And you know what? I like that flip. It was so different because usually people start out with their story and then go into other details. I like that flip, and it was fun surprise for me. But one of the things you talk about, a few minutes ago, and the book itself, it's also a workbook, which I really found helpful because, you can go through it, make your notes, you ask some really good questions that people need to sit down and give some really good thought to, particularly if this is something that they're struggling with. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to start talking about some of the stuff that I've gotten highlighted and see if you can expound on some of that, okay?
Sure.
All right, very good. So the book is about forgiveness, okay? Not necessarily just forgiving your father, but forgiveness overall, really. So it says, so many painful hearts are being built from not allowing their heart to forgive. The word forgive is becoming a word that is being covered up and tossed away when it comes to fathers of the world. Personally, I do not think that many fathers are given a chance to be a part of their child's life. So let's talk about that for a minute. Tell me where you're coming from with that.
Well, I look at not only saying the public and the media, because I'm not a big media person, but I work in a school. Been working in a school for 11 years, and then just actually experiencing that. And we can see that many times you can be around people, you can hear negative things as it relates to the father. And many fathers are not placed in the children's lives. And a lot of times that's because the two adults, the situations they may be having, the confrontations they may be having. So what happens? The father is pushed back, and then the child only sees what the mother has there. They don't understand what's going on, which a child really don't need to know about anything that's going on there. They only need to know about my mother and my father love me as a child. But it is out there that the fathers are pushed back, and we really need to try to change that mindset, because that's important right now. We see what's going on with our children. We see the things that are happening. And if you watch so many different shows, or just different shows that come on, I look at the Ayanna Van Zant show, just different things. And everybody you hear, and women and men as adults, the first thing they say, my father was in my life. And they're still holding that pain. They're still holding that pain. So we got to realize that the fathers are needed. And as adults, the men and women, we've got to work together to make sure that we make things pleasing and actually of a balance for the children, as well as when they become adults.
Okay, very good, very good. So it says, I have a strong passion of believing that a father will eliminate the problems that are shown and demonstrated by many children. For example, what?
Well, I think a lot of young people, we can see what's going on the streets today. We can see a lot of violence, a lot of things that are going on. And we know that father, Charita, now, we grew up, the father's tone, the father himself was very strong in the households. So when that father was in that household, as God says, he's the head, he leads. But now what do we see? We see the women are leading and doing many things, and respect is being separated there. But I feel that a lot will be eliminated if the children just had that relationship with their fathers, boys and girls, because the father's going to have a different relationship than that mother has. The mother is more nurturing. The father can be more firm and more of teaching, and more, especially for our young men. They need that. And even the girls. I was the girl. The father's important. the father talks to us to teach us how to be respected by the men, the men to be involved with. So that's very important. I think right now some of the fathers were involved, not being negative or putting anything against the fathers, but if we can just allow the fathers to come in, but I know some cases are different, that would help some of our children with some of these situations that are going on in the world now.
Right. So just sort of a counterpoint here, because the book talks a lot about the role of the father, what society has done to fathers, what some of these households of single parent households led by women, the kind of discussion that may go on in the household that has an effect on the child towards their father.
Yes.
And so, I won't really, I'm going to tap on this a little bit, but I won't really get into it because you don't talk about it here, but I'm wondering if there might be another book coming along, because it doesn't talk a lot about the father who's responsible for that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, I do have another one coming along. It does.
Okay.
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah.
Because this book really here begs of a counter conversation.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
I think. Okay, so that the male or the father who's not present for whatever reason or not all that involved needs to own up.
Yes.
To his
most
role.
definitely. Yes. And that's why I say it goes both ways.
Yeah.
Somebody said, well, why you don't have a book called Forgiving Mother? And I'm not going to say who said it in my household, but I'm like, well, it's not about that. I'm talking about the father of what I've experienced.
Right.
That's right. Here there is another part to it because I wanted something to lead up to it. And it's going to be a little bit more because really I want to interview, and I'm looking at a documentary. So I want to interview and talk to some males and females as it relates to things.
Okay, all right. Well, another thing on that point, and let me tell you, I don't know if you've watched any of my videos before, regardless of whether I make notes or whatever I highlight, the conversation can take a detour at any time.
That is fine.
Based on what we're talking about at the moment, okay?
That's fine.
So that's why my interviews are usually so long, because hold up, I'm gonna put this aside for a minute. Let's talk about this.
Let's just talk.
Right, yeah, let's just talk. Okay, we're just having a conversation. So it says, when the emotions of pain intercede, forgiveness seems to be hard to deal with, especially when the pain was caused by another person. But the most pain comes from the treatment of a father.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and read the second part. Forgiveness cannot take place when there is a form of negativity being fed or spoken over the child. Well, so let's go back here. When the emotions of pain intercede, forgiveness seems to be hard to deal with, especially when that pain comes from the treatment of a father. Is it significant in your experience? Is it significant? And so your mother was present, so we're not talking about absent mother, but is that pain significantly different from anything that you might experience with a mother?
Well, with me, my mother had to step into the leadership role. And if it was vice versa, it could be the same. It could be the same. And that's why I try to put in things about parents as well, not to have it so focused on the father. Because I know a lot of people, when they see that title, they think that. But still, it can go both ways. Yes, it can go both ways. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so you had mentioned earlier, someone who asked you, well, why not forgiving mothers? Why do you write this about forgiving mothers?
Hadn't even read the book, Charita. Had not even read the book. Took the defense, and I'm like, it's not a negative book. Trust me, because when people look at it, I'm like, I'm really not placing the crown on the father's head, because they may see that when they're in the book. Because, as a woman, we do have to uplift. I'm married, I have a son, I have brothers. So we do have to uplift, but still, there's two as it relates to those children or child.
That's correct. And I was reading, as I was reading the book, much of this I was thinking, well, this really doesn't apply to just the father. You could just as easily use this experience with a mother or someone else. So
that's right.
Yours is based on your story, but if you read this book with an open mind, you can you can relate it to other parts of your life. Yes. So for many young girls, inner pain attacks the heart due to the lack of not having a father. the bond between the little girl and her father cannot be replaced by anyone else. I don't know if I experienced that in my own life. I mean, my father's still living. We do have a relationship, but I do understand that connection between a father and daughter, and being daddy's little girl. Okay.
Exactly.
And so I'm gonna skip up a little bit because, like I said, you flip it, and at the end you start talking about your relationship with your father. But is it my understanding that so you didn't speak with your father for a couple of years? And this began as you were already an adult?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So this, that I won't call it a disappearance. What word would you say?
Well, I just feel that it was something that he was going through.
Okay.
Yes.
His absence.
Because yeah, and the transition started when I was a teenager in my home, but my mother continued to teach us about the Word of God, and she told us that's your father and you love him. That's what we did. But as I became an adult, the relationship was there, but then absence came.
Okay.
But I had to, all of a sudden, a call came one day. We didn't know where he was. A call came one day about our father, and he was severely sick, and we had to go and get him. We had to go and get him.
So the transition really started, you say, as a teen, and how long did that transition take? I mean,
I
from
was
that point, did you see it happening?
Yes, I did see it happening. And you know what's so amazing, Charita, is that I didn't even know anything was really happening. Because my mother was raising us in a positive atmosphere. God was the head of her life, and she raised us that way. And we were raised in the church. So we really didn't know of anything going on per se. We just knew that our home had transitioned. I call it transition because I don't like to use the word broken or destroyed, just transitioned. It happens to many. But we didn't know that, because of how my mom handled things, that leadership role that she stepped into. But there were more things, Charita, that I learned about when I became a wife and a mother and understood. I
Right.
understood more things because I said, some things men just can't handle. Some things become overwhelming for them. And if they stepped away, it might not have been intentionally. So I had to understand that as a wife and mother was like, yes, that's right. Some things happen and they just can't deal with it like women can, So I had to understand that. And so that's why I think the peace came in. And I didn't have true unforgiveness, but I want people to understand that it could have been there. It could have been there. So somewhere down the line, of course, I forgave him. Of course I did.
Right. And it's funny that you should say that, historically about men not being able to handle certain things. And I don't know, this morning, I should have been focused solely on all that rain I was going through, but and nothing else. And I don't know if I was thinking this in preparation for this conversation or whether I had heard something or read something, but I was thinking, men, and I was saying to myself, men have been absent from the beginning of time, which is not necessarily true. But I began to think, and I'm relating this to things that I believe may have happened as a child, not necessarily in my family, but also things I've seen on TV. And I'm thinking back in 50s and 60s when the men just couldn't handle it, and they up and left.
Yes.
Simply because they couldn't handle the responsibility.
That's the word. It became overwhelming for them. Yes.
It became overwhelming for that. Was that your situation, you think? I mean, and I want to go here, Ursula, because was that your situation?
I feel that it was. When I became an adult, I started evaluating and thinking about things. And I think that's what it was.
Okay.
So that's why I think it was much more easier for me to understand. I think that's what it was. And, as women, Charita, we get overwhelmed with things sometimes. And sometimes we're like, oh, we just got to stop these things. But still, we don't know, as I always tell a person, we don't know how that person was raised. You know what I'm saying? Because in many homes, the mom did many things and the father back then provided, but the women did everything else in the home. So when I became that adult and that wife, I was like, yeah, I can see this now. I understand what happened. And I think that's why my mother was so loving to come right back in, and we did everything to the end. And I just commend her for it because she was a true woman. And people would tell us things about, you all are amazing for what you're doing. And I couldn't understand that. I wasn't even focusing on it at the time. But as he passed and years later, I was like, now I see what people are talking about when I was writing it, because people wouldn't do it. And I'm like, people just wouldn't do that. My thing is that's why I'm at peace, my mother and I, because we did what we supposed to have done.
Right, right. And I don't want to say that in some cases it might not have been, it might not be that people wouldn't do it, but people wouldn't do it with that kind of forgiveness.
Yes,
They would do it still with some resentment,
that's
and
true.
harboring other
That's
feelings,
true.
which
That's true.
is probably not good for the person who's being cared for,
Yes.
nor the person that they are, that is doing the caregiving.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I learned so much, Charita, being a caregiver, because that was it was a hard time for me. And my father passed 2011. So we took him in like at 2000. My home actually came in my home, my husband, like 2008. And I got him in a facility, assisted living facility, because I wanted to give him that dignity back. That was important, but that was the womanhood of me doing that. And when he became sicker, I realized, I was like, wow, he became my baby, because that's what they turned to. You're taking care of them, you're doing everything for them. But he knew at the end that his family was there. And the one night that all of my brothers, I have two brothers, and my mother was there. I had one brother was back and forth working, but the one night everybody was there is when he passed. And when he passed thinking his family was with him, because of the mindset. They erase the actual present and they go back. And I let him think that as we talked. His mind was back in the 70s, and I didn't change that. So when he left here, he knew his family was there. And that was just the beauty of it. That was the beauty of it all.
Right. So when you all finally made that connection back together, because he was sick, at
Yes.
that point he wasn't so sick that he couldn't communicate.
No, he had congestive heart failure,
Yeah,
which
because
was
that's hard.
very bad.
So
Because if I wouldn't have got
he was
him,
communicating.
he would have been passed a long time ago. Yeah.
Okay.
So when
All
I
right.
got him, he had congestive heart failure. And then within a year or so later, we found out stage 4 leukemia.
Okay.
So,
So I'm leading up to, what kind of discussion did you all have about, this absence and what needed to take place, for this healing? Did you all discuss it, or did you just do it?
no, it was never discussed. We just really seemed like we just picked up. My father and I, we really, I'm the oldest, and my mom would always say, you were the apple of your father's eye, the only girl. And that's just how he treated me, still like that little girl. And I talked to him, hey, Dad, we'd go in, I would kiss him and hug him. It was no different. We didn't stop to pick up. It was never discussed. We just had our conversations every day. I would get off work each day, take care of his finances, do everything for him, go by there, do everything I needed to do, make sure to do things for my mom as well. But we didn't talk about things like that, and I thank God that we didn't, because I don't know how that would have affected our relationship, you
Right.
know. So I'm grateful that I didn't go in asking why, because I didn't think I needed to, because whatever it was between my father and my mother, I just left it that way.
Okay.
So that's how I left that. And then our relationships were great. And he really totally depended on me. And that was okay. That was okay. And I appreciate him trusting me enough for that, to be his primary caregiver. And I tell people a lot of times when I hear people complain about taking care of their parents, I said, no, we don't do that. I said, you may be the chosen one. It doesn't matter if you have 5 or 6 siblings. So I said, God, I was the chosen one, and that was okay. That was
Okay.
okay.
All right. Yeah, because I know, a lot of people, in an absence like that, they need to have the discussion in order for
Mhm.
that healing to take place. So I think it's really good that, that healing took place and you all never uttered a word about it. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think it's absolutely great. So we've already tapped on some of the stuff here that I have highlighted about the family, the unit, and you start off
Okay.
really talking about the missing piece of the puzzle. So I'm going to skip over a little bit.
Okay.
Strength, opportunity, and self-awareness. So the difference is many children are using survival characteristics of anger, rebellion, and disrespect. A child needs to understand that their negative way of living will destroy their character as a person. Walking through life with bitterness and anger is not healthy and blocks many life lessons. Not only with regard to children, but certainly adults too.
Exactly. Exactly. And they grow up from that all the way up to adulthood, still carrying that. But just as I'm speaking for the month of March in my Facebook community about forgiveness, I tell people as a certified life coach, I can't tell you that you should forgive. You know, the main thing is that I can work with you and give strategies, but with each person, there's a timetable with that, and there are baby steps. There's a process to that. So that is so important. But people are actually using that. Well, I'm angry because of this. I've turned out this way because of that. I know that you may feel that way, but let's work on a way to see how we can overcome that, because, you know, God has a purpose for us, and there's so much out there. So we don't want a person to feel that they have to be in that place, you know, because of this happening.
Right. And kids do act out. If you don't mind my asking, how many siblings do you have?
I have two brothers.
Oh, you have two
I'm the
brothers.
oldest,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. And so I'm assuming because your father, departed from the home when you were adult, they were adults too at the time.
We were all young. They're younger than me. I
Okay.
have a brother under me 7 years apart, and my other brother was 16 years apart.
Okay. Okay.
We're just spaced there.
So did they have this same attitude as you from the start?
Yes, we all felt the same way. My brother under me was in Kentucky. He was living there. He moved here. So we all just had the same, you know, peaceful attitude with it. And we took shifts and did things. My mom took shifts as well. We missed time off of work, pay off of work. We did what we had to do. And he was on hospice for 5 weeks. But it's just a beautiful thing. And that's where my next part of my book will come in, because I tell a person, you know, being there with my father through his transition was painful, but at the end it was beautiful, because at the end he was free, but he went with just a, you know, heart feeling wonderful knowing his family was there.
Right. And how long were you his caregiver in all, in total?
I was my father's caregiver for about 4 years.
About 4 years? Okay. All right. Very good. So it says a young child, teen, or even adult woman cannot move forward to a peaceful life until the strength of forgiveness takes over. That forgiveness changes everything, doesn't it? I mean, it changes everything.
It does. It does. It helps you develop and grow, because, you know, it could just do a lot to you. It can affect your health. You know, as a person, you're always thinking about this. You can't move forward in life, your purpose, you're at a standstill. It can do a lot to you. And like I say, I can't just tell a person, you must do this. It's a process. But really, you wouldn't believe how free you would be once you get to that point in life.
Right, right. And so I know that you do some coaching. And certainly I don't want you to indulge any information about a client that you might be working with. But you know, so do you see this much in your coaching business and having
Yes.
to help people work through that?
Yes, because I am an empowerment purpose coach. And yes, and there are individuals that have so many pain points, and that is one of them.
Okay.
That is one, forgiveness, and it goes on down into bitterness, anger. You know, it's going to continue from that. So that's many pain points coming from that, yes.
Okay. All right. So it says, yes, the role of a father is rated by many people. A father is rated by a mother, family members, the world, news media, and even their own child. And then it says, well, I'm going to go get to this in a minute. But yeah, so they come from all angles.
Yes, it is. I mean, it's all angles. And I think about it, I said, well, if I was a father and a man, how can I handle it? You know, how could I handle that? Because, you know, family can get involved and say negative things. The media can always do things. And oh, God, forgive, be it if a child, you know, go up against the father. So it's so many ways and so many angles that things are coming towards that father, you know. And I'm like, if we're trying to help them and want them to be in a child's life and to be better fathers, we got to eliminate some of this negativity. We've got to eliminate some of that.
Yeah, and that would be a lot for anybody to deal with. Father, you know, childless mother, motherless. It doesn't matter. Any human being.
Exactly.
Yeah, it would be a lot to deal with. It would be a lot. And speaking on that, you know, how that could affect people, and I'm starting to think about, you know, kids, or well, not even kids and adults in social media. How you know, the attacks
Yes.
On people, on strangers that you don't even know, people you
Yes.
will never know. And so there's all these bad messages. And if a person believes it, and I'm just thinking, if a person believes, in some way that they may be a bad person already, and then you have people piling it on.
Hmm. Exactly. That's a lot of pressure.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of pressure. Yes. And, it's like you don't need to live up to the expectations of a person. And that's what some people do. The men trying to live up to expectations of those individuals, or even what the child wants them to be. The main thing is that you just need to be that father. Just be that
Yeah.
father. Build that relationship. That's important.
Right, right, right. And ironically, because I was going to say the same thing, that's quite something to have to live up to,
It
and
is.
you would die trying to, and I
Yes.
guess the way that you would not have to deal with that is, uh, number one, you have to be you.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah,
Hmm.
the only thing you can be,
It's
really.
right.
Yeah,
And it's no different if he has children by, another mother, another child somewhere. They still have to build, you know what I'm saying? Meet up to the expectations of more
yeah.
households.
That's
So it's
exactly right.
pressuring. And like I say, I have a son. So I talk to him about these things as well, so that helped me out because I'm saying, I want him one day when he becomes a father, I want him to do the right things. I want him to be treated right. I want you talk about those things. So that's the way I look at it as well. Then my brother has children. So, it's in many ways of just being around the men. I just know how I can see that. But yes, so true.
Right, right, right. And having a tremendous impact. Says your mother also lost many pieces of her puzzles when she and your father were separated, but you knew in your heart that your mom kept the pieces that she had lost because there was going to be a day when she could put her pieces back together again.
Yes.
Explain that.
Well, the reason I said that because my mother and father were still legally married. And I'm 51, so they would have been married 51 years. Yeah.
Oh, really?
So it's really like a love story I tell people because my mom came in and she did everything, for my father. And when we talk, she'll say, my husband, it just touches my heart because she was a respectable woman. With, if you know what I mean, I only knew of my father.
Right.
So respect her for that. And that's a true woman.
Hmm.
So it's just so, and when I did my first talk on an Atlanta radio show, she knew about the book and everything. She said, you didn't tell me anything about it. And she listened and she said, I just clapped and cried. She said, I just can't believe it. I didn't know you felt that way. I said, well, yes, that's how I feel because you showed me so much what a woman should do, what a woman should be. And she stayed there till death do them part, and she did,
Yeah. Did
there.
she? Because you say here, she had your mom kept the pieces that she had lost because there was going to be a day when she could put her piece of a puzzle back together again. So she lived in expectation that there would be a day that there would be some kind of reuniting.
No, I was just saying that she continued to hold my father in her heart.
Okay.
She continued to hold him in her heart, and that's what she was holding on to. And at the end, she was able to place that. She was able to place that because in the end, we were all there. She was there. She did everything that wife should have done, and she was at peace when it was all over as well.
Okay, okay, yeah, because I didn't really. That's what I was thinking when I read that
Mhm.
she during those couple of years that she was in anticipation that the family would be a one unit again. But I understand what you said. She just held down the fort. She
And
did.
you know what? In this book, it actually dedicated to my father of saying that his sickness brought the family back together.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it
we
did.
brought back together. And I
Right.
tell people, I said when it was going on, the sickness, I didn't understand. It was not meant for me to understand. But at the end, I realized, God does things for so many reasons. And if that wouldn't have happened, we probably would have never bonded and been back together again.
Yeah.
Never would have happened.
Were you all that he had? Did he have? I mean, was his mother living? Did he have siblings?
Yes, he has siblings. He's the older of eight, and he has his mother was living. We actually buried her 2 weeks later. So we had a moment there. But yes, he had other siblings and everybody involved as well. But they were so great because they knew, my father really wanted me to be there to do things. So it was just a great experience as a family as a whole. It really was.
Okay, all right. So for a child to feel wanted and accepted by both parents, it would take both parents to communicate in an adult and peaceful manner when it comes to a child. Now, we know, as I was reading this book, and it starts talking about things like this, I was thinking, okay, so a person reading this book would have to know and be willing
Exactly.
to do this. And as I begin to think about relationships that are in dire need of this, those are the ones that are probably most resistant.
Exactly. Exactly. You're right.
So I'm thinking, they're reading this book, thinking, I don't need this, this ain't me. It is all about the other person. I was just wondering, and this is not necessarily based on your own experience, but it was just a thought that I was having. Sometimes people who, I remember giving my sister a book that, I thought would really benefit her. And she's, well, I'm going to give this to somebody else. They can really use this book. And she
didn't think it was for her.
It was for her. So the same thing, that's what I'm saying here. They would have to be receptive to that. But what if they're not? What if they're not?
Well, if they're not, the main thing is that they need to understand it's not about them. It's not about you as a mother. It's not about you as a father. It's about the child. And that's the most important thing. And that's what I try to get people to understand. I know you may not be happy at this moment. You may not be happy at this moment, but look at the child. That's what it's all about, is the child. That's the main thing.
Yeah, and I know this. I know this book is not about what I'm about to say, and we don't really have to go there. But ideally, we know that these kind of situations don't work out for everything.
Yeah.
And we can be hopeful. But what about instances with narcissistic parents? I mean, seriously.
Yeah, it's all about me. Yeah, that's probably what's going on in many cases. That's why I'm saying it's really not about you. And you are so right.
But they would never get that. They would never get that.
They would never get that. They would never get that. And I don't know if they will, because I'm like, the child is going to grow up one day.
I'm telling you, they won't.
Yeah. The child will grow up one day, and guess what that's going to do? Cause problems between the child and that parent. Mm-hmm. So it's just beginning to be a disruption everywhere. And really, with a narcissist, you just can't change that mindset anyway. I don't know. We had to pray on that one. That's a hard one. You can't change that. And that's true. Thank you for bringing that up. That's hard.
Any thoughts on dealing with that? Because we're talking about communication here. So in a situation like that, so you have, the mother and the child, and certainly still the mother, should not should not be talking badly about the father. Yes. But as kids grow older and they see that, can we talk about a minute how that communication between the parent, the mother, and the child goes, and how does a child adapt to communicating with that type of parent? This may be out of your.
I understand what you're saying, because in cases, let's just say, for instance, if the child is with the mother, the child is with the mother, and there's confrontation and things going on, then as the child grows up, that's what I always tell them, that child is going to grow up, and the child is going to really find out the true story to everything. And then the father and child build a relationship. Well, mother, how would you feel? Or if it's vice versa. They may never talk to each other, the mother and father. They may never have that relationship as it relates to the child. It's not the relationship at themselves with the child, but somewhere I'm hoping that child would mend and build that relationship with that father, and continue that relationship with the mother. And in many cases,
or are you saying build it with the narcissistic parent?
Yes,
because it could be either one.
Yes, and I think it. In many cases, I've seen it happen. It's just that that's when a child realizes, oh, this is what happened. This is really what happened when they became an adult, and then the light bulb comes on. But that mother's going to be who she is, you know,
And
or
it
that.
will come on. The light bulb will come on, won't it?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, and I think about, don't waste all those years where that couldn't work. You know, we may feel a certain way. We may be angry about something, or we may be that narcissist or whatever, but still, how can we work with this? We can work with this because we don't want this child to grow up one day. And, you know, children turn to they're angry with the mothers because of what they've done as far as keeping them there from their fathers. So I've seen things like this. I've heard people say things like this. And I just talked to them about my story. I said, let me
Right.
just tell you about my story, you know, and I'm thankful my mom didn't do that. You know, we're happy. So
All
that
right.
is a lot of cases. It's a
Okay.
lot of cases.
All right. We strayed away a little bit, but
Oh, no, that's great because, you know, that may be in part two.
and it needs to be. And it needs to be. You know, I was you know, early on when I started doing this interview, there was an author, a couple, and I saw them at an author expo, and I said, you know, a good follow up this book would be about, you know, narcissism. And the wife was like, oh yeah, you need to talk to me about myself because I can tell you all about all about that. So that conversation is going to happen, I think, one day, because I think there are a lot of I'm gonna say women, because the most people that I know that have dealt with this thing have been women who have dealt with narcissistic husbands.
Yes.
So I'd be very interested in understanding, because that would be kind of a flip to this,
Yes.
even though it might involve forgiveness. There's a real struggle with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that maybe come in, like I said, I'm gonna do some interviews, you know, with people and talk with people because I want to do a documentary
Okay.
and talk with people on it. So, and I know that'll come out. I know it will. You
Mm.
know, back then we would probably wouldn't. They didn't call it that. We'd probably just call a person trying to dictate. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Be demanding. But now we have a word for it.
Controlling. Yeah.
Yeah, controlling. Yeah.
Okay. It said, I wake up adding a special prayer in my son's prayer book daily. Says I need to put those prayers that I was speaking into existence in writing so I could carry them and read them over again. Carry them, read them over again. Your son's is your son in college?
He's back home now. Mm-hmm.
He's back home now. Is he finished college?
No, he's still in college.
He's still in college. Because when I was reading this, I thought, you know, these prayers that you write down and you carry them with you, do you give them to him?
No, what I did, he
So
was
that
off.
you can have them with him?
Yeah, when he was at Tuskegee, he was at Tuskegee for a year. So I would pray about it, but I would write out because I'm big of writing out prayers. I don't have that prayer closet, but my sticky notes are stuck in places. In my office, I have prayers stuck in places. So I had a little small journal, and each day I would write out something. And that's something I want to give to him one day to show this is what mother was doing for you. Because mother's going to always build that prayer jar up like our grandmothers built it up. We're still living off some of my grandmother's prayers. So that's something that I share with him because I still have my husband here and I make sure he takes the lead role of teaching my son. But as that mother, I still want to let him know as a mother, there are things I'm going to talk to you about as well one day when you become to be a father. So I do prayers and I still talk to him about that and I have that and still write in it for him.
Well, so you just said, you know, about your husband teaching your son, and that just reminded me because I hear people say, you know, a woman can't raise a man, but if you're for single parents, you know, and me personally, I don't believe that that's true, that a woman can't raise a child to be a man. So I was just wondering your thoughts on that, because if you're a single parent, you have no choice to see that the son is raised up to be a man. So I don't really, do you hear people saying that a woman can't raise a boy to be a man?
I've heard that and I don't believe that because I see it all the time. And I'm one person, don't watch sports. But when the NFL draft come on, I'm sitting there like I'm every child's mother because I'm just as proud because I look in the audience. And I didn't realize this, Charita, what I was doing. I'm like, is there a father out there? Where's the mother? I'm looking, trying to see. And a lot of these young people are raised by mothers. And I'm like, no, that's not the case. And no, that's not the case and everything. So when I'm more geared, and I noticed that probably because I have a son, my connection is more with boys. You know, I talk with them more. Young men, when I'm out somewhere, I talk with them more. I have that connection with them. And it's only probably because of the men around. But no, I don't believe that. I think that, you know, women can do a great thing because, you know, women are, and some women have to do that. They have to do that. But by my husband being the household, I know the roles and I respect that. And sometimes I may want to get a little pig-headed with it, but I say, you know what? Let me just breathe and enjoy the fact that he's here.
What's going on about my business?
You know, so.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad to hear you say that because, you know, like I said, I don't believe that that statement is true, and I won't go so far to say that it's ridiculous to say it. I'm not going to say it.
Some fathers may pass away, and women have to do things.
Right. And you know,
married things. It's all types of situations.
All kinds of stuff. And you know, just on that note, because I remember last year, and this was the first time I really heard it a lot. On Father's Day, like on Facebook, people were wishing, kids were wishing their mom a happy Father's Day.
Yeah. And I didn't like that. I saw it. I saw it.
Yeah. And then there were people who were talking about their experience, you know, of you know, their kids wishing them a happy Father's Day. And so there was a little bit of uproar about it because that's where I heard this most, that a woman can't raise a son to be a man.
Yeah.
You know.
And I saw that people post things about that, and I didn't comment, but I'm like, we still have to respect how that child may feel about that. You know,
right.
That's what we have to do.
Yeah, it was so personal. I mean, if that child felt that the mother was both the mother and the father because she was playing dual roles.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't understand what the big deal was about that. You know,
I did but just like I do on Mother's Day, but for Father's Day, for when I first put this book out, I will put on there and talk about Father's Day. And I said, post a picture and about your father wishing. And last year, it was amazing of the people on my page that were posting their fathers and saying great things and saying how they were excited they had just built their relationship with their father. And I noticed how people was actually listening, watching my posts. And I'm like, that's all it takes. You know, we can help each other out with this.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, and that's somebody said, you know, for once their father just told them that they love them. And I'm like, yeah, see, things can happen. We may have to take the child, the adult child, but still, it was a great thing to see people doing that more. And I'm like, this is great. You know, it was great to see.
It really is. It really is. This next highlight, we just finished talking about that, about the co-parenting. Co-parenting. So we're gonna push on past that. So and then it gets to your story, which basically we've already talked about this because we kind of weaved it into the conversation that we were having. It says some fathers do not have a peaceful mind, heart of love, or any form of spirituality. Fathers can sometimes only express and give what they've been taught. So we did talk about that a little bit, but that relates, you know, and I recall saying, my cousin and I used to say sometimes, you know, as we talk about parenting our own kids, that our parents did, you know, they did the best that they knew how to do.
Yes, and fathers back in the day didn't really show expressions. You know, they just didn't say I love you or go up to hug their children. You know, it's just things that what was not done. And that's why I think it's probably more done with the daughters. But, you know, do it with your male son, with your children that are boys as well. So that's true with it. You know, it just wasn't there.
Right. And in any household, you know, that's where the lessons really begin. So you only know what you know.
But you know, that's right. That's
and
right.
You learn from your environment.
That's right.
We as society must stop destroying the character of fathers. In many cases, fathers are trying and doing the best that they can, but the world continues to tear them down. And then we've talked about that, but I won't even go into this because obviously we're only talking about the fathers who are doing the best they can.
Yes, and I was actually speaking also in a point of, you know, my story as well. Yes, and then we know there are some, you know, other situations, but still just pushing it towards to where forgiveness comes in.
Okay, all right. So I think that we've covered pretty much everything in the book and left a lot for people to read. Okay, it's a small book, and we've talked about a lot, but there's plenty of left in this book. So make sure that you get a copy of this book, Forgiving Father by Ursula Maston Bradley. On a final note, people who may be watching this video, and I'm going to send it to you just so you can review it first, and then you're welcome to post it anyway and use it any kind of way that you want.
Okay, well, thank you.
So what would you want people? And I like doing this because with authors, they're not new to doing video, and they'll get on video and talk about their book. But I like this because there are a lot of people like me that want to ask some direct questions right off the cuff. You know what you know, and so I'm every person like me who's having a conversation with you, and that's why I like doing it like this. So now tell people what else you might want them to know about this book, why they should get it, where and how they can get it.
Okay. What I want people to know about this book, the reason I wrote this book was because I wanted to keep my dad's legacy alive. I wanted people to know how a situation that I encountered turned out to be like a love story at the end. It really gave me peace at the end, and the importance of that father figure because of what we see in the world. That's what I want people to understand. And regardless of the situation, even if you're that child, regardless of what's going on, I don't want a child to feel that they are considered to be a nobody, or to feel alone, or to get angry or frustrated because their father is not in their lives, or for what other people tell them and hear. So that's what I want people to understand, regardless of what's going on. And that's why my actual pictures were chosen by my author. I told her, give me some pictures that show a father holding the child, then the mother and the father backs turned and the child's in the center. And then I have the one where the father is sick up there in a wheelchair, and the child and the daughter's behind. So I want to give an image, and I want to be silhouette because there's not a face there, because that could be anyone. So that was the purpose of that. And I think you should read it because it's a book that can be used, and it was written for children. It was written for those that are at a stage where they don't know about forgiveness, and for those that are parenting, co-parenting, divorce. It's written for those that are counselors, for ministry, social workers are using it. So it's for different areas that it's written for. It can even be in conversations like we're having as well. And they can I actually have this book here. I have inventory here where they actually can email me with the information you gave at uabradley@gmail.com, or they can go to my website at beinspired.site, SITE, and they can go through and send me a message, and I will send them an autographed copy of this book.
Okay. All right. Very good. And while we're on here, I don't know if you've announced about, what's happening later on in the year. Have you made an announcement about that?
No, not yet.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. So we're going to wrap this up. Again, I want to thank Ursula Matsin Bradley for talking with me. Yeah, exactly. About her book, Forgiving Father. Okay. Yes. And so I'm going to send this video to her. I will be posting it as well on Facebook. I'll write a blog post, a brief blog post about our discussion when readers can find out about that on renewrefreshreset.com. Again, my name is Charita Cadenhead. I am realtor, author, and host of this segment of About the Book, both on Zoom as well as a 101.1 FM on the Joe Locker Show once a month. So I want to thank you, and those that will be listening. I hope that you learn a lot from this and that you'll be buying the book. And that's a wrap, Miss Bradley.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it.
Very good. And we're out of here.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Have a good one. Bye-bye.